So we should probably go to the Rockets because that's another pretty interesting team that will probably force us over the time limit as well.
Here's hoping not, because we're trying to be swift here. But let's get to the Houston Rockets. Key free agents, none really. KJ Martin has a team option. I'm assuming they'll pick up. No key extension eligible candidates. Their cap situation, best spending tool is just going to be actual cap space. They have I would classify it as a shit ton. Can get to over $62 million if they renounce everyone except for KJ Martin and their first round holds. They do have one notable trade exception, $3.9 million from the Christian Wood trade that expires on June 26th, though. Their biggest needs, and I think this is where we start, are kind of all over the place because they owe OKC a protected first rounder in 24 and 26, and OKC has swap rights in 2025 that is top 10 protected on that. Their needs are all over the place. They need top end talent. They need defensive talent. You could argue that they definitely need shooting. Do they need a point guard? Do they need a big? Or do you trust Şengün and Jabari Smith Jr. to develop into your front line of the future? They pretty much need everything. The question is, how aggressive are you when it comes to accelerating this process? Are you we've talked about this enough, and I don't want to blow through the time. I think we're both of the mind that even if you're going to accelerate your timeline, it doesn't make much sense to go and max out or pay James Harden really for any number of years. If he's giving you a discount, sure, but he's not going to do that. I don't see, you could even tell me, well, they could turn around and trade for another star. James Harden plus whom is making you a contender? And I don't know the answer to that.
And I think Harden, we have to talk about Harden because it's just been rumored forever. And is it a leverage play to get more from Philly? Is it real? I think all of the above, maybe. I don't know. But I agree with you that, look, Houston has so much money. It's getting Harden is not a problem. I think he's the wrong kind of guy. If you add Harden, you better be sure that your young guys are not lead ball handler, first option, potential type guys, because I think he's going to be on the ball a ton. It sounds like maybe Doc Rivers was interviewed fairly recently, and it seemed like he was saying that Harden still just wanted to be ball dominant Harden in Philly, and that was a real struggle. So I think he's going to stunt the growth of some of the younger guys potentially, just in terms of the touches won't be there for them. So if you don't think Jalen Green and he deserves more of an offensive share, if you don't think he has that potential, if you don't think Alperen Şengün is going to be a playmaking center, then I guess Harden, whatever, is not going to do that much damage. But somebody else makes more sense. So if it's Van Vliet, if you want to swoop in on the Kyrie thing, I guess you could. I don't know that I would go for that. But they have coming up with options for them is tricky because I think a lot hinges on Harden as far as what kind of team are you going to be this year? It's clear they want to get better, but they still have a lot of avenues to do that. And like you said, it doesn't have to be a max guy. You could, throw $20 million at three different guys if you wanted to, and just kind of build a mid-tier veteran roster that way. I don't know. You could get in Jeremy Grant territory. You could go get Harrison Barnes. You could it's kind of limitless as far as what they could do. And I think it just depends on who that first domino is. Who's the guy they sign where it signals a direction, It would almost be and I don't know if they could afford this, but let's say they could. And I'm sure they could find, if you ended up with Fred VanVleet and Kristaps Porzingis, that feels less wildly indicative of one direction where you'd be able to, those are guys who will streamline the development of everybody else. They fit, but they won't cannibalize reps for the number 4 pick, for Jalen Green, for Jabari Smith Jr. That feels like the most palatable outcome, but they've also been mentioned, and you alluded to this, where it's to the non-star names of just paying a bunch of, Dillon Brooks. Everyone expects them to sign Dillon Brooks. And it's all right, you have the money, so if you have to pay him above the MLE, not the end of the world, but you give Dillon Brooks $18 million. I don't know what that doesn't commit you to one direction, but I don't know if that's how much better that's actually making you. And I think, yes, okay, the defensive mentality, getting that in there, I don't want to see them. I'm all for them towing the middle ground more than skewing all the way towards James Harden, but I don't want to see them kind of hover around the sub middle and going, the Dillon Brooks route feels like that would be very much it. Even going I guess I wouldn't mind if they paid Trey Jones
like that, Brooke Lopez is even fine. It's like those are the type, but like a Dylan Brooks or let's go and pay Io DeSunmu, or should we be the team that goes and poison pills Austin Reeves? I'm not really about that for them. But they're also an interesting, because it's so hard to pick a direction for them. And I think both of us, if we were in charge, would still kind of slow play this. Fred VanVleet or Kristaps, for me, let's see, how do you feel? Is probably like the extent to which that would really accelerate this process.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think as you were talking, it made me realize like I'm not that high on really any of their young guys. Like I'm not sold on Green. I think Jabari Smith Jr. had a really uneven first year. Sengun I like, but he has flaws. I wonder if, like, it seems pretty clear that their coaching situation was suboptimal for most of those guys' tenure. And I would be curious to see what they look like with Ime Udoka running things. And like, maybe it's just a case where natural maturation and a new coach, suddenly all these young guys they have look better and you don't feel as motivated or compelled to like go make a big splash signing because the trajectory is angling up and we can just organically build this. Like that's not totally off the table, especially if they keep this number 4 pick and do something with it to add to that core. But yeah, if I'm spending Porzingis, VanVleet, like I don't think I'm going to go into the absolute upper tier of max guys, just because I don't see one out there that makes sense from a risk standpoint and is young enough that work with some of these guys developmentally. So yeah, that's all I got on Houston, unless you have anything else we can move on.
Did you have any trade targets that you want to mention for them?
I mean, they don't need to trade anything. They could just sign whoever they want.
Well,
right?
I mean, like, would you go after a Siakam if you're them, or the Jaylen Brown link to Ime Udoka? Do you look at Jared Allen? Or are you a team that gets in the Zion Williamson business?
Yeah, that's one. We've talked about that. I think if you throw number 4 out there, I forget the package. We did a live stream last week, and we both talked ourselves into Houston as a great Zion destination built around number 4 and like Jabari Smith and I don't know, Tari Eason or something like that.
So you wouldn't make that type of a trade, even though it's Zion. It's a team that it's a player that kind of fits your timeline. You're not making the star trade unless you're also getting players in free agency that I don't want to say necessitate, but would incentivize you to make said star trades.
Well, Zion obviously has a bunch of questions about like fitness and health and everything, but like someone like him makes more sense to me than Harden or even like VanVleet and Porzingis, who would, they're good players but they would be sort of stopgaps. Like this isn't, unless you're just blowing the core up, I think you still have this earlier timeline that you're kind of trying to nurture. So, but Zion risks and all, or Brandon Ingram, I guess, if you want to put 4 on the table and the Pelicans bite there, I think is another decent candidate. I would skew young if I'm making trades for the Rockets.